Oh yeah, preaching to the choir. We're back with another edition. We knocked out the Patriots, so it's only right that we had to go to another historical franchise, the Dallas. What? How many rings they got? 6 rings. I think that sounds right. 5 rings. 5 rings by the Dallas Cowboys. My Minnesota Vikings. You know, we got just as much as wins as they do, but not the Super Bowl. So we're gonna catch up one day, 1 century. We will be right there with the Dallas Cowboys. So anyway, I got 2 guests for me, 2 other Cowboys fans. We got Kevo. He's not a strange guy to the show. He's been on here plenty of times before. He is from the Bottom Line podcast, and we got Perry from the Unwrapped Sports, co-founder of it. So glad to bring him on as we go through this Dallas Cowboys, man, and it's going to be fun. So I'm going to introduce Kevin first. What's going on, man?
Man, what's going on, Kev? I'm glad you could have me. I'm excited to be here, man.
Definitely. And Perry, what's going on?
What's going on, boys? So excited to be here talking some Cowboys today.
Definitely. So we really can get right into it. Everybody know how's it going, preaching to the choir. It's just going to be a back and forth. I'm going to ask y'all some questions about my take on the Cowboys stance, and then y'all opinions as fans and as, podcasters and things of that nature, streamers, and we can go back and forth. It's not going to take all day. Everybody who love the Cowboys, this will be a good one. So first off, I want to talk about the recap of the season. How do y'all feel about how it ended? When you got Jason Garrett being fired. We'll talk about that later, new coaches, stuff like that. But what was y'all take on the season when it comes to not making the playoffs, having a talented team, starting off 3-0, things of that nature?
For me, at least, I was obviously disappointed. I mean, for the Cowboys, the standard's always going to be a bit higher than any other team, any other franchise. Kind of like you just mentioned, all the rings, all the money. Jerry, he's not ever hesitant to spend a dime. He's going to go out there and make the headlines. He's going to be the epitome of the Cowboys. So I think for having that much money and not being able to surpass 500 at this point with the kind of team that we had was absolutely ridiculous. And, we'll speak about Jason Garrett a little bit further on in the podcast, but it starts with the coaching. I think leadership always sets the tone, trickles down. Jerry Jones can only do so much with a huge pocket. But at the end of the day, when you're handling football operations, do you want to play for your coach? Like, do you want to go out there, work the hardest? It didn't seem like that. 8-8 definitely was not up to par, did not make the playoffs. And I obviously don't think that Jason Garrett should have been there last year, but I'm glad to see that they made that move, bring in a whole new regime. If you have that much money, that much talent, you're not able to make it work, then something's seriously wrong up top. So I'm glad to see how, I guess, it ended with decisions made there, sometimes hard decisions, but at the just from a football standpoint, like how are you happy with an 8-8 season as the Dallas Cowboys when you're in nowhere close to a rebuild mode? You have a team that can compete and you don't make the playoffs. Like, how are you happy about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's funny, as a Cowboys fan, you watch Cowboys games closer than anybody else may watch Cowboys games, and you pay attention to a season closer than anybody else would pay attention. And it's just crazy because it's always the same story. It's always relevant enough to be there, to be in contention, with playoff contention, division contention, but we're never actually truly Super Bowl contention or contenders. And it was just more of the same. It was so much frustration because there was so much talent on both sides of the ball, and just so much just underachievement. It was always a hump, whether it was a penalty here or a blown call here, or it was just fighting ourselves, shooting ourselves in the foot over and over and over every game. Starting off so well, only can beat teams below 500. Like it just such a roller coaster of emotions and frustration. I'm glad, like we all three have said, I'm glad. We'll talk about Jason Garrett later and the firing and stuff, but I don't know. Part of me feels like it's on purpose. Jerry's like, well, if you have a dynasty like the Patriots, people know you for winning, but that's it. if you're like the Cowboys, we're always relevant for something, even if it's, choking or whatever it is. Like, people are always talking Cowboys more than they talk anybody else. And in a businessman's, mind, that makes the money. So as far as, keeping it just to the season, real frustrated. I'm excited to see what we do in the draft. Excited to see what some new pieces can do. I like what we've done in the free agency. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. So feelings of optimism, but of course from last season, extreme disappointment.
Now, how do y'all feel about as being Cowboys fans when you, like you said, Kevin, is you always in the news for something, whether you're on First Take, Undisputed, you're always in the news, whatever it is. They can compare Tom Brady versus Dak, and then they'll next thing you beat the Giants, Redskins, and Dolphins. Oh, this team is the best team in the world, and you lose. Well, this team can still do this and this and this. So you're always in the news for something. And it's kind of like, all right, as a fan base, man, we have to, I won't say lower expectations, but you got to be like, okay, let's be realistic of what we have and what we don't have, and how can we compete with these other teams, and are we on the level that they are? Even sometimes, you might be 8-18, but the way we talk about you, 13, you're supposed to be a 13-3 team. Because let's say, for example, me and Kevin talk about all the time that the Vikings and Cowboys are very, very similar when it comes to how the roster is built, the front office being great. You got at least solid coaches in the building, and you got quarterbacks that may not be the Mahomes and the Russell Wilsons, but they're on the tier right below that can get you to a Super Bowl. And we always talk about, like, okay, well, Cowboys can do this and do this. Minnesota can be going through the same exact thing, but like you said, you're always in the headlines. So just real quick, how y'all feel about always being headlines?
I mean, like, some years it's worse than others. Obviously, I would say more like 5, 6, 7 years ago, it seemed like every week someone was getting caught for something. Someone was doing it. It's turned into how the Raiders, I guess, used to be with that connotation. And it was like, if you want to come here, if you're kind of a trashy person but have a lot of talent, we're willing to take that chance on you because we have so much backing behind us. It's such a low risk opportunity, and we were one of those franchises that Pac-Man Jones, it didn't matter who you were, like, and even in recent years with David Irving, all these different guys like Randy Gregory, who's still on the team. But at the end of the day, I think every team's going to go take a chance on a player or two when they're dealing with kind of a shady situation. Kareem Hunt's on the Browns, Tyreek Hill still plays for the Chiefs, but at the end of the day, I think it was too consistent. The Cowboys were always just being known as, having something negative. And at the same time, we weren't winning Super Bowls. It's been since 94, 95, since they brought home that last Super Bowl. And at the end of the day, if you're not winning and you're not there as the Dallas Cowboys and you're making the headlines, with all the negative stuff, it seemed like it became more of a laughing stock of the league, and everyone wanted to hate the Cowboys because no one wants to see them succeed. Like, no one wants the Patriots to win another ring. Like, no one wants that Cowboys to win another ring. But at the end of the day, I think it's more now people are starting to warm back up to the Cowboys, the prestigious history, focusing on winning and, playing good football. And I think now with the new coaching staff, if you're going to bring that crap in here, they're not going to take it. And I think it's going to start to change. But at least the last few years, I guess I can say that it's been a little less than, I guess, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But at the same time, I can't really say that with confidence because there's been quite a lot of negative headlines around the Cowboys players, as of the last 2-3 years. So it's not like that's really completely changed. But at the end of the day, I think now instead of, so the Cowboys, Jason Garrett's going to clap on the sideline, they're going to continue to be mediocre, and we're just going to keep making negative headlines. And what's going to change? And now I think we all have that hope of like, okay, now we got a new regime in here. Obviously, Jerry's still got that money. Obviously, players are going to have to be on their toes. So I think there's just that sense of optimism and hope to where people feel like it's going to be taken a little bit more serious, and that winning football is going to be the only way for the Cowboys because this is not a rebuild. You got a lot of people here. You spent a lot of money. You tagged Dak. You brought Zeke back last year on a big contract. You got Mari back. Like, you're bringing this team back. You've signed amazing veterans. So I think that right now it's a win now or nothing kind of mentality for the next 2-3 years. It's not just this year. Because of the moves they made this offseason and the length of Zeke's contract. And I think with a good draft or two, this championship window will stay open for the next 2 or 3 years. So I think I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and it's one thing you didn't mention when I was thinking you would. Joseph Randall, him getting arrested. Like, I tell you, man, every every week it was like, oh, such and such is suspended for 4 games. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, can we just, and me and Kev have talked about this before. It seems like ever since, Jerry Jones didn't pull the trigger on Randy Moss. He's been like, oh, you know what? I don't care if they got character issues. If they got talent, we got to bring them in here because, you see guys like Randy Moss, these are Hall of Famers. And I think that there will be some changes, but going as far, I like that there's a new, sometimes you just need a new voice, and everything. I'm 100% on par with everything you said. Hopefully, like it seems like the culture's changing to like, hey, like winning is the only thing that matters. No more headlines, no more, cheerleaders, no more. It's now we have to produce on the football field. This team was too good. We're bringing them all back. We really lost one major piece. We lost a couple pieces, but one major piece in Byron Jones. But we're coming back. Like we're not no more of this nonsense. Like it's time to get right. It's time to go and move in a new direction. And the best way to do that is with a new voice, which is, where the McCarthy comes in.
Right. So Jason Garrett's out. Mike McCarthy's in. So Jason Garrett, 3 seasons above with double-digit wins out of the 9.5 seasons he was there. Obviously the goal is to win a Super Bowl, but when you look back at Jason Garrett's stint with the Cowboys, how do y'all deem it a success, or what kind of grade would you give him? Even with the added pressure, I know, like I said, we talk about how the pressure of the Cowboys is so monument, but it's like as a coach, when you look back, look at what he's done, his record in those 9.5 seasons. What kind of grade would y'all give him?
C+, B-. At the end of the day, he didn't fumble the bag completely. He still had some winning football. I think at the end of the day, it is a lot of pressure to be the Cowboys coach. When things go wrong, you have to point the finger. But, I don't even feel good about giving him a B-. I'm going to give him that C+. He passed. He was almost good enough to get that B, but not really. I mean, at the end of the day, when you have, a feast put in front of you, you're going to eat. It's not like he went out and did anything to win a game for the Cowboys. I never once watched a game, saw him on the sideline, and was like, that was magical coaching right there. Like remember how Vrabel completely out Bill Belichick in the playoffs? Like any game that you watch of the Buffalo Bills with McDermott, who is probably the smartest coach in the league, but the least vocal. He's not this crazy offensive schematic dude. Right. I'm watching him win football games for the fucking Buffalo Bills. Excuse my language, but at the end of the day, he is like, you can see it, you can feel it. McVay, not last season, but you can feel that the year before. Like he had talent, but he was winning some of these games. Like he was single-handedly outperforming players on the sideline, and I never once got a feel that he had that in him, or even had the ability to rally up players and make them want to reach from within and fight for one common goal, which is at the end of the day, the definition of a leader. It's rallying the troops to all fight for one common goal together. And not once did you at home watch a TV and say, wow, if I was playing, I'd want to run through a wall for Jason Garrett. Look at that passion on the sideline. Like never once did those words ever leave your mouth or even enter your head. So at the end of the day, this whole monotone clapping thing, it's good enough. You're somehow going to keep it here, but you never once are going to make it exciting. You're never going to win a game yourself. You're never going to get these players to reach deeper than just the amazing talent that we've signed for cajillions of dollars. So at the end of the day, the ownership is great. He's doing everything he can. Obviously, you're not going to agree with some of the things he says, but he's never been, shy ever. The Packers during McCarthy's time spent like $6 and like a bag of potato chips throughout free agency during McCarthy's entire tenure, which is a big reason why he ended up parting ways with the Packers there. It wasn't necessarily his fault. He won a Super Bowl. The guy is a phenomenal coach, and they never once spent any money in free agency to go get him any kind of top tier talent. And it's not like we can look back and say, wow, the Packers just completely killed draft after draft after draft. Right. It's not like that happened. Aaron Rodgers is a GOAT. He's amazing, but you have to give credit to coaching staff. You have to give credit to what you got. And to say that would be a B- would just be way too generous, because I'd be using outside factors to give him that extra boost, when in reality, I think he was a C+ coach, because he wasn't the worst, but not good enough.
See, this one, I'm real. It's a real tug of war with me on this. To your point, Sean McDermott, I'm so glad you said him. I said this on my podcast. I watched a game where he was about to. It was like field goal time at the end of the second quarter. Clearly, he was going to kick a field goal, but he came out and he just, you can't take your timeouts with you at halftime. So he came out and showed a set, and whoever it was showed what they were going to do against that set, and he just took a timeout. And the commentator said it, and I'm so glad they did. And they say, he was never going to run a play. All he wanted to do was see what they're going to do next time he shows that formation, so he has something for it. And that's the kind of stuff that you don't like. Jason Garrett doesn't have that. Jason Garrett was an amazing coordinator, and I think that's where he belongs. He was a great football mind, especially as a coordinator. However, that was 9-10 years ago, and the game changes. And as a head coach, you don't really have enough time to change how you scheme now, because you have a whole team around you. I don't think he was ever really built to be a head coach. And given that I don't think he was ever really built to be a head coach. I don't think he has the personality to be a head coach. When I look back at it, I'd probably give him a B, maybe even a B plus. And here's why. Just hear me out. In his 9 years, he went 85 and 67. There were 3 playoff appearances, 2 playoff wins, which isn't great, not a high percentage. In 4 of the other years, he was in a winning game. In other words, whether it was week 17 or week 16, it was always for the division. Win, you're in, okay? And then the other 2, so that makes 6 of the 9, his quarterback got hurt. Tony Romo with a broken collarbones on multiple occasions. And so when you look at that, a lot of times when people are talking, you ask them, like, would you rather go and win 1 Super Bowl and then never go to the playoffs for the next 15 years? Or would you rather be there, be in the conversation, whether it's the Super Bowl or just the playoffs or in contention every year? Most people would say, I want to be in contention every year for 20 years and maybe hopefully win a Super Bowl, or as opposed to I get 1 guaranteed Super Bowl, but then that's it in 15 years.
Right.
And so when you look at that, he did enough to always be there when he had his stuff or when he had his people. That's 7 of the 9 years. And I get it. Mediocrity is not something that you strive for in the NFL. You want to win it. The ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl. But it's like, how many better options are out there where you go, we made the playoffs last year, we missed it the next year, we made the Super Bowl the next year, Atlanta Falcons make a Super Bowl, I haven't been to the playoffs since. Like that kind of stuff. Or is it like, oh, we could win the division this year. Oh, we can do some things this year. So that's why I got to give him a B, because I think that given the fact that I don't think he ever was even really the kind of personality to actually warrant being a head coach. So given that disadvantage, given the injuries, given the suspensions, given the team he's playing for, how he handles it, I would say that he did a good job. I do still think it was time for a change. But I would say that I can't say that he's a great head coach, he's top tier, but I can't say he's bad. And I think that he did all you can ask. When you really go and look back all of it, can you really expect Jason Garrett to go galvanize the troops, win a Super Bowl? No. And that wasn't the case. And that's the same thing. It's the same answer to the question 10 years ago. So I think that really the onus comes down to Jason Garrett was probably never the best decision to be the head coach. But what he has done, or what he wasn't able to do, is more of a product of the situation and product of the fact that maybe he was never supposed to be the guy in the first place, as opposed to his shortcomings.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, as far as he probably never should have gotten the job in the first place. But Jerry Jones loved him, and with a guy, Jason Garrett does have a good personality, like you say, high IQ guy. So around the league, he is valued and he is liked about. So that's why Jerry Jones wanted, because he didn't want the Jimmy Johnson, even though Jimmy Johnson the ones bringing him Super Bowls. Right. He doesn't, and he got Bill Parcells in there when it was great. But it's like Jerry Jones had his hand too much in the pot. And for Jason Garrett, and that's why I think it is kind of hard to give a type of grade that's probably not fair, is because, okay, he got somebody breathing down his neck who likes to be micromanaged, who like to have the boss right there looking at everything you do, which I can understand for owners, because this is your baby, this is your franchise, this is the way you make money. I get all that, but it's like, okay, for what he done, for the roster he was given. I mean, we had Tony Romo. What was Tony Romo's shortcomings? Didn't have the offensive line. The defense wasn't great. Okay, then they started gearing up for the defense, getting them offensive line, and then now his health deteriorates. Now you have to go, and you got lucky, in my opinion. You get lucky with Dak Prescott, and okay, now Dak Prescott on the rise, and these young guys on the rise. Okay, the defense is still here, up and down a little bit, but we don't have that guy, a Sean Payton, a Bill Belichick, those type of guys who can take this what I got. And even though I'm an 8-win team, we're in this win it week 16, win 17. We should already be 11-win team if you had that right kind of coach. So it's like, that's why you can't give him an A. That's why you can't really give him a B plus. But then again, it's not his fault Tony Romo get hurt. It's hard to have a good backup and still sustain it. It's very low success rate of that happening. But you still had times where you 8-8 and you should have been 10-6, or sometimes you probably could have been 6-10. And because Jason Garrett is a solid to good head coach, depending on the year, he can get you 8-8 and put you in position where, okay, we really probably should have had a top 7 pick, but we end up with pick 17.
Is it Jason Garrett, fighting and clawing his way to get that team to 8-8 compared to a 6-10 season, or is that just the fact that when you're given a feast, you eat? Like when people put food on the table for you and it's plentiful, like sometimes that's going to make its own move right there. Like it's not like he went out of his way, moved any pieces around. He never once made a huge substitution himself that, really, really changed this franchise, or really stood up to Jerry Jones, said how he felt on the kind of guy he needed here. Why am I not winning right now? I need this. I need him. I need her. I need whatever it is on the coaching staff or the players or whatever it may be. Like never once did he run this team. Did he take this team to any more wins than they had? Like I said, there was never once on the sideline that he made. Yes, he can call plays well. Absolutely. He's going to do much better this year as an offensive coordinator. He's back to his comfort zone. But like you said, Kevo, it's 10 years ago was the last time he played, offensive coordinator calling plays. Like you got Cliff Kingsbury, you got McVay, you got all these different guys who are just changing the game at the end of the day. And is he prehistoric? Like we're going to have to see that when he's with the New York Giants. But I could tell you one thing right now, it was never once like, wow, because Jason Garrett was the coach, like he made a couple good decisions and a couple of extra wins. If anything, every season was a 10-6, 11-win season, whatever it may be. And the reason why we were 8-8 was because of him, not because of the lack of talent that we had. And at the end of the day, yeah, why aren't the players playing as well as they should together? You got to, again, look back to the coaching. Jerry Jones can't pay them extra money before the game. There's an extra bill, go out and ball. Like they're going to go out and try every game. But, not once where I felt like they were put in a position to succeed more than they just already were with just having a stacked team. And you're right. There were multiple times like with injuries, like with Romo and stuff. So it's not like he had a perfect 10 years where it's like, hey, you had a decade of no issues. Why didn't you win? So you got to give him, some flexibility there. So I got to do that, of course. But at the same time, what's the model nowadays? You win a championship with a quarterback that's most likely on a rookie contract. You use those years to build the team around that guy. There's a reason why that's now the model. You had not just Dak right there, but Zeke at the same time grooming and still putting people all over the place. The defense was formidable the last few years, most definitely. And you still can't get it done. At that point, it's just like, dude, you're no longer working with the old pieces you got. You even have more of a revamped team. You have younger guys, more athletic. You got this, you have that. You can get more creative. And, never once did he. I think it was just Dak going out and showing up, using his opportunity. Zeke, yes, with the suspension, that hurt too. But that year with him as a suspension and them missing the playoffs, did Jason Garrett deserve a 5-year extension?
Oh, of course not.
5-year extension. Like, what kind of decision is that? Like, yeah, maybe don't knock him out there. I'm not saying that was the time where you fire him. I personally, as a fan, was yelling for it, of course, but still, but at the end of the day, you don't go out and give him a 5-year extension and think that earned that, so I think it was more, yes, maybe it's not necessarily his fault. Jerry Jones, yes, gave him the job maybe when he wasn't ready for it or didn't deserve it, and extended him when maybe it wasn't the best move to. But at the same time, he's very family oriented, Jerry Jones, and they are very close. Him and Gary, it was a huge emotional, separation towards the end. So I can understand why he held on. I don't know what choices were out there for coaches, but there's definitely been a Mike McCarthy out there once a year for the last 10 years. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Now, I would say this real quick, Kev, I'll let you go. So we got a little 4 sports rule that me and Rashad had came up with about how we think the NBA and NFL should go. So one of the rules that we have is the coach's specialty should be the team's recipe. Now, meaning is if you're Bill Belichick, you're defensive minded. No matter what the talent is, no matter how great or poor the roster may be on defense, because you're defensive minded, you should know how to put guys in the right situation to succeed in your system, because you're getting the right guys for your system, right? So I think it's a couple coaches that really just play the middle of the team. Where, for example, Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh is the guy. He's the guy with the game plan, but you got the offensive coordinator calling the shots, defensive coordinator calling the shots, and he's the guy overall. And I think Jason Garrett belonged in that category as well, where and that's kind of why the defense may have not been as great one year, or even with a Tony Romo going down, or even with a young quarterback in Dak, it's not going to be how, for example, Drew Brees getting hurt and Teddy Bridgewater, Sean Payton good enough to keep that team afloat on his side, or like a Bill Belichick when he let Chandler Jones go, he traded Ty Law back in the day, he let Richard Seymour go, and still have a pass rush, still have a good corner. So it's kind of like, for him, it's kind of disadvantage. That's a disadvantage come to those kind of coaches, the Harbaughs, Jason Garrett. I would say Pete Carroll is in that same class, because even though he's defensive, we've seen all the guys from his coaching tree get jobs because they run the defense. But that's why it's kind of hard for those guys really to, be as great when they don't have the players. And you can say, yeah, John Harbaugh is a great coach. Pete Carroll, most lists will have him top 5. But it's like, okay, what if he don't have Lamar Jackson? What if he doesn't have the Marlon Humphreys and Terrell Suggs and Ray Lewis and all those guys? What if he has to deal with an injured Lamar Jackson and have to go through a whole season with Robert Griffin? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can he survive? Or Pete Carroll, we talk about it. I don't think the Seattle roster is good at all. And yet he got Russell Wilson. What happens if Russell Wilson goes down? Can a guy who's in the middle, still keep it on? And that's why I think Jason Garrett falls in that. And it's like, he just, those type of coaches just can't elevate it when something goes wrong. And I think he should have been out of here 2015, but you can't really get him out of here when the quarterback get hurt situations. I can understand it, but it was a little bit too long overstay, long overdue.
Definitely.
It's it's Jerry Jones's problem, because history repeats itself, and he's doing it again now. When Jason Garrett was the offensive coordinator, he was allowed to call all the plays. I don't really know what it was about game plan per se, but as far as calling the plays, 100% Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett played quarterback for the Cowboys. He's been in the Cowboys organization for like over 20-something years, like just involved. And Jerry loves this dude and wants to keep him around. And Jason Garrett was always at some point going to be the head coach. When you really look at it, you're looking at he was the quarterback, and they were letting him as the third string or backup quarterback go be in the coaches meetings, like going over the game plan for the next week. That was their vision for him always. And so now I'm looking and I'm like, okay, now you got Kellen Moore, like quarterback. Now he's the offensive coordinator. He's 100%. The offensive game plan, according to Jason Garrett, was Kellen Moore's. All the subs is Kellen Moore's. Kellen Moore's got all this control. So I see this history repeating itself, which makes it like, I don't think, Jerry Jones doesn't want a Jimmy Johnson or a Bill Parcells or a Herm Edwards, because they want to run the ship and they want Jerry. I want you to go sit in the box and be the owner. This is mine.
Yeah, like most owners.
I don't
all 31 owners.
And it's like Jerry has to be like, I got to be on the field. I got to be at practice. And if Zeke only got the ball 12 times, I got to call you out in the media. I got to breathe down your throat. And so, I don't think that Jason Garrett ever felt empowered enough to say, yo, Jerry, I need this. I need this from you. I need you to spend the money to do this or whatever. I don't, because he spent 20 plus years watching the coaches that do that get shipped out when they didn't need to. So he's like, well, I got to keep this job. I don't think that I can just.
Yeah, I think it was more about retention, more about job retention, let alone let me take these chances and go be, an innovator or go out there and do something or do something that hasn't been done. So I don't think he's got an ounce of a bone in his body.
Nope. But I do love what you said. Like the Cowboys, when they were 8-8, those weren't years probably where they were going to be 6-10 without Jason Garrett. Like Jason Garrett, I don't think elevated the Cowboys to any wins. Like
not one, literally not one.
Like you didn't look back and go, that's a win. That's a coaching win, right? They know.
Win right there. Never once. I watch football with a very analytical lens, and I love sports. I'm sure like you guys do to the core. Like when I'm watching things, I watch it weird. And especially with the team that I love, like I'm really looking at it. Why is this not working? I'm watching these games, watching them on the sideline. I'm like, if I strapped on the jersey right now, do I want to run through a wall for him? And ask myself that every game. And the answer every time would be like, no, why is he here? Like, why is he on the sideline? So, I mean, I don't have to have that complaint anymore.
And my biggest thing with him is that he's so stuck in his own way. He's one of those guys. He probably has the same routine in his daily life that he's had for the last 15 years.
The same protein shake in the morning for 40 years.
Do this at this time. Do this at this time. Make this food this way. Go here. Go here. It showed whatever game that was. I think it was against the Eagles. Fourth down, and you got Amari Cooper and Zeke on the sideline because that's the normal substitution rotation that they do every game. Like it's like, oh, it doesn't matter that it's win or go home. I guess stay the same way no matter what. Like who are we throwing to right now? Like we got Blake Jarwin in the game with the other backup tight end and Michael Gallup and Tony Pollard on 4th and 9. And we're supposed to get that in Philadelphia. Like that just makes no sense. Like I don't understand. And
yeah, I get you.
That's my biggest gripe with him for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll move on. We'll talk about Mike McCarthy toward the end. All right, so I kind of want to talk about the front office when we talk about Jared Jones, and it's really more so about the draft, right? So because that's when it all comes down to when they talk about the roster that you currently have, the guys that you drafted, some hits and some misses, and cause you to be where you at now as far as money situation, having to choose between people, and stuff like that. So first, I want to talk about the bad. It's really just the last few drafts. That's all I did. Like last 4 or 5 drafts. So it's only two draft picks. I want y'all just a one line sentence about their decision on this. First of all, last year Tristan Hill, D tackle. So second round pick, and it's like
I was so pissed.
It's only 1 year, but y'all done signed 2 D tackles already. Let one go and brought 2 more where he's supposed to be the guy to go in there. And then secondly, another part of the D line, choosing Taco.
With TJ Watt, Jesus.
Over TJ Watt. Okay, so just give me a little synopsis of that right there. Just those.
This is the thing. They draft the Cowboy Will McCray does such a good job. They draft so well.
Yeah.
Everywhere else. Everywhere. I'm talking like you got all pros in Travis Frederick who retired. You got everywhere else.
Oh man.
But the D-line, for some reason, they cannot figure it out. Like they really cannot. I don't understand. I don't get
it too, and that's like his bread and butter too. And so
what is going on? And like he's more concerned about bringing in people that used to play for him on defense as opposed to like finding the best. Like I won't lie, there have been some players on defense like safeties, Kenny Vaccaro, prime example, who I wanted the Cowboys to draft, and now I'm glad they didn't. But Lord have mercy, I can't. The Tristan Hill one. It's a year. He got to Dallas and immediately got in trouble for doing something. Missed a meeting or something. Got sent home from practice. So he got some growing up to do already. But I can't get over. The Taco one, man. Like that one bothers me like to my core so bad.
And like you look, I got some of the drafts in front of me right here. I mean, you look at last year, which was really a big snoozer. Besides Tony Pollard in the 4th round, which I was a big fan of, I was like, high upside. This is the perfect running back for today's NFL. Go get yourself a little Sproles, or go out there try and match what Kamara was doing with Ingram. Yeah, maybe it's a poor man's version, but like look at Devin Singletary. Like I thought it was fabulous. So that one I'm never going to debate. Tristan Hill, I was pissed. Connor McGovern, I was like, we need a guard, but not this one. Not now. Like it just wasn't the right time. It was a reach.
I would say that Connor pick may be the blessing in disguise.
Right. And I think we needed guard. So I wasn't like too pissed at that. But Tristan Hill, I always saw Tony Pollard. I was like, that's great. Then they go cornerback Mike Jackson. They go Joe Jackson, Donovan Wilson, Mike Weber, Jalen Jenks. So it's more of like we haven't seen too much yet. Can't really make too much of an impression on some of these guys who haven't had too much of a chance. But then you go to years before that, like Leighton Vander Esch in 2018 was number 1. Fabulous pick. I thought that was fantastic. Matching up with, the linebackers that were already there, taking over for Sean Lee. Fantastic. Connor Williams, 2nd round. Another great pick. He should have been picked in the 1st. He slipped. Great value. Michael Gallup, 3rd round. Huge contributor last year. He's going to be even bigger next year. Lawrence Armstrong, he hasn't really showed up too much. Dalton Schultz, Mike White, Chris Covington, Ced Wilson, Bo Scarborough. So, like, you can see there, at least there was so many bright spots. And then the year before, you start with Taco Charlton, and that blew my mind. Like, when that happened, the rest of the draft I was actually really happy with. I'm not going to lie. That draft, overall, in a nutshell, if they continued to draft bad, I would have freaked out. But after Taco, when they went Chidobe Awuzie, when they went Cheeto, I loved him. I was like, that's a high-energy guy. I watched him a lot because I went to Arizona State, so I watched a few different Pac-12 matchups with him at Colorado and loved how he played. So I was like, great pick. Jordan Lewis, back-to-back. I'm like, our secondary is so trash, it hurts. Like, this is fantastic. One of them is going to pan out. One of them, Byron Jones, is going to leave at some point. That was in my head. Ryan Switzer, I was so pumped about this pick. I'm pissed it didn't work out, but still, same thing. Marquez White went with another corner, Joey Ivy, Noah Brown, Jordan Carroll. Right there, that's amazing. And the year before, I'm not going to go through all of them, but that was the year that was Zeke, Jalen Smith, Dak Prescott, Rico Gathers, which never worked out, but that was interesting in the 7th round, a really cool project. But you can see how year after year, the drafting is actually really impressive, which is even more of a nod to why isn't Jason Garrett making this work when you have so much, not just veterans that are seasoning, not just signings that Jerry Jones is doing no problem, but you're getting these infiltration of youth, right, talent, and deep drafts, and you can't do anything with it. The year before that, Byron Jones, Randy Gregory, Chaz Green, Jesus, how many times do you need to kill a draft and still not succeed? So I think for the front office with the drafting, I give that an A- throughout the last 10 years, throughout his time there. I'll keep going back, but Travis Frederick, Gavin Esparr, all these guys, they built the best offensive line for a 3 or 4 year span that ever played football ever. Give me a better one. You can't. At that point, that was the most dominant offensive line that ever got put together. So when it comes to drafting, I'm going to give the front office an A-, I would say, for that. So it even makes it more sad to why you still haven't been able to find the success. But, like we just mentioned, you got to take advantage of these guys on rookie contracts and, going out and getting a guy like Dak and Zeke, that time is gone now. So it's are you going to hit gold again, or are you going to, you guys spent all this money. What happens next year, when other players, their contracts are up? Let's say we don't do well in the draft this year. There's just a lot of what ifs because we missed that window when we really struck gold, year after year. And I think now it's just, can the front office keep up that type of caliber of drafting? Because it's impressive from the scouts to the front office, but how many years are you going to kill it? And how many times are you going to draft Taco Charlton, or another D-line or, Tristan Hill? How many times are you going to mess that up and have to fight an uphill battle for the rest of the draft?
Yeah, it's all these great picks, and it's why is the D-line the one where you're making the mistakes? When we got Jordan Lewis in the 3rd round, first of all, I was yo, Jordan Lewis is gonna be better than Cheeto. I like them both, but I just can't forget Jordan Lewis at Michigan. I was so excited. Leighton Vander Esch, I was like, who is this? He played 8 on 8.
I told you that was gonna be a good pick. I thought that was gonna be a good pick.
I didn't do enough research on that. They are so, yeah, I'm with you. A-. The only reason you can't give them A+ is because when they make the mistakes, they're bad mistakes when they make them. But
to that point, it's kind of all right, because you're a at the draft and you're hitting constantly, yes, like I said, you have your hiccups with the Tristan Hill one, which we can't really, like I said, we can't really grade it, but it's like, okay, they're showing us that they don't like him because you're bringing in guys who are 30 plus and go play in front of a young stud.
Right. So I think that goes back to like the winning now. Like I think with Mike McCarthy and them coming in, it's like this is a championship window. We have talented guys; they will contribute. But like, do we want them to start right now just because it was the move that the last regime made, or am I going to put the best guy that I can physically get into that hole and think that that's going to win me a Super Bowl? And let's say that Connor McGovern or Tristan Hill is just the one that blossoms into this beautiful flower behind some of these veterans. But to sit here and put all the pressure on these young guys back, and I think the coaching staff nowadays and Jerry is a little bit more aggressive right now, is all I have to say. I think right now it's just that win now. And even though it might contradict some of the last picks, it's a different direction for the team. So like they drafted with a certain direction in mind, and you got to turn right now. So it's, maybe some of the signings might not make sense with the past few years. And I agree with you. But like you mentioned, Kevo, what's wrong with the defensive line? Like, why can't we figure it out? So what are you going to do? You're going to go out and
you got to sign it. Yeah.
Bring in McCoy, bring in some talent, see if it'll take some pressure off Tank and some of the other guys on there. And hopefully with a new defensive coordinator, an awesome defensive coordinator, hopefully they can blossom and really figure out, get an identity, because the secondary is not going to be the identity this year. We're going to have to get pressure, or else, depending on who we get in the draft, the secondary is not the best. But I do like that Clinton Dix signing, though. I do like that one a lot. Nothing magical, but been waiting for a safety that knows what they're doing for like 5 years.
Right. So you hit on Zeke, you hit on Dak, hit on Gallup, hit on Jalen Smith, hit on Van Der Esch, D-Law. I mean, the list goes on. Van Der Esch and we talk about Tyron Smith, the Frederick, the Zach Martin, who's the best lineman in the league. And then on top of that, I'm gonna say you hit on Amari Cooper because you traded the first round for him. So with all that being said, and this is my fear with the Dallas Cowboys is you don't want to trend the direction that we see the LA Rams going when it comes to we're paying, and it's kind of like these decisions. You have to look at 3 year, like you said, a 3 year window of a championship. You got to look at all these decisions in 3 years, and it's like, okay, we drafted Van Der Esch. We know after the year he had, you got to pay him top dog. He's going to be one of the best linebackers in the league for a long time. Right. You already gave Jalen Smith the bag. You gave D-Law the bag. You had a decision this summer with Dak, Cooper, Byron Jones. You also have to worry about what we had Zach Martin. We got Tyron Smith. They making top dollar at their positions. Okay, how are we going to afford all these guys? Who can we let go? Who can we realize, okay, we may not need you as much as don't mean we don't need you, just not as much as this other guy. So it's really a couple things. So one, Zeke skipped the line. So excuse me. I think that's just crazy as it is. Like, you have to wait your turn in a situation where we're hitting on too many picks. And I don't know, maybe they forced his hand, but when you draft a running back that high, it's like, okay, I mean, I probably have to pay him because I wasted a top 5 pick on a guy where I could have had Jalen Ramsey, for example, a position that lasts longer than a running back. So we have to kind of give him what he wants, even though he's skipping the line. So you already got that decision that they made, and they decided to pay Jalen Smith. They decided to, this offseason, let's franchise tag Dak, let's bring in Cooper back, and we're gonna let Byron Jones walk. Now, me and Kevin talk about this all the time. They should have been paid Dak because now they're in this situation where he's gonna make it. Like, he's going to make 35, 36.
It's lingering now. It's just lingering now, and now it's like, crap.
Now it's too high. Right.
Now that's on our mind. And when this year was all about, like, fuck, what are we going to do? And the year before that, it was like, fuck, what are we going to do about Zeke? So now it's just like just another question mark. I mean, so far they figured out Zeke. They figured out bringing back Amari. Dak Prescott's still playing football. So in the reality, the last 2 huge situations they've been in, they've hit. They've figured it out. But at the end of the day, like, I agree with you. There's that fear that, like, it's going to catch up to you. And can you keep Dak? Can you hit again in the draft? Like,
And to me, if we value, by we, I mean the general public of the NFL, if we value the quarterbacks the way we do, where we trade 20,000 picks to go up 10 spots to get the quarterback, or we're going to pay like a Kirk Cousins, a Jimmy G, a Dak Prescott. We're going to pay them $35 million. Okay, then why wouldn't he be first in line, right? And then because if you took care of him early, which I guess they was deciding, do we like him? Is he good enough? Are we going to move on from him? And it's like, to me, he should have been the priority A when it comes to it. I understand the success of the team is through the running game, but as one of my rules is always, I don't like to pay running backs because I feel like a running back by committee is just as strong as a lead horse. Yes, one of my favorite players of all time is Adrian Peterson, and he's a bell cow back, and of course the Zekes and the McCaffreys. That's all it's all good to watch. But it's like, what's wrong with the Michelle, James White, what's the white guy, Burkhead as a tandem versus a Zeke, right? So it's kind of like, okay, where are we prioritizing where we're going and all that stuff? And another question I want y'all to answer too is, do you think they made the right decision when it comes to Cooper versus Byron Jones? The reason I ask that is, I believe Gallup is on the way up. I believe Michael Gallup is going to be in that conversation at some point for a top 25 receiver. I think he can get there. I think he can have that Chris Godwin year that just happened. I think he's a guy that can be that number 2 receiver, but he's really a 1B. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's capable of that. And if he does hit that mark, well, we got to pay him too or let him go. Right. And kind of similar to my Vikings, we'll run first team. We don't need to pay 2 top receivers. There's no point. And that's why the Diggs trade happened. So it's kind of the same thing here. Now that we decided on Cooper and we decided that Byron Jones, we let him go, that means we're going with our – is Anthony Brown still there?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going with Anthony Brown and Wuze, and we're going with Michigan, Jordan Lewis. If we're going with that trio instead of having Byron Jones, that means Michael Gallup, when your time is up, it's time to go. So do y'all think they made the right decision there, as well as the money situations?
I think it's a little premature to see if we made the right decision, depending on Gallup's really production this year, because last year, he was a top 20 fantasy wide receiver at the end of the year, and no matter what format you played in, he was top 20. So the guy was putting up numbers. Amari, it's funny with Amari because it's like sometimes for some reason he caught 2 passes for 16 yards, and then the next game comes out and puts up 600 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns, and you're like, what? You know what I mean? So I feel like that happened a lot with Amari, and that's fine. I will take that. I'm not complaining at all. And there's a reason why Gallup is doing so well. It's because of all the attention that Amari is getting. But back to your question about, do I think they made the right decision? I think Byron Jones is he's going to be one of the best cornerbacks in this league, no doubt. One of the best defenders in this league because he's very like Tyrann Mathieu. Like in reality, like you can put him at corner, safety, nickel, like you can play him anywhere. And he's an Olympian. Like he is legit Olympic athleticism and speed, and the IQ is not even, it's insane. If you look at his wonder luck and all these different things, like he's a genius when it comes to, football terms. So for him, I loved Byron Jones, but at the end of the day, he made a lot of money, a serious amount of money for a cornerback, and he deserved it. Don't get me wrong. But I think here the Cowboys wanted to continue to be like, we need an identity. What is our identity? With the most high-powered offense in the league, if not one of them. Right now, we have the Patriots down. The Rams aren't doing too well. You have a lot of questions around that. Who were the highest, at the full potential, fully healthy, best offenses all around? And I think now the Cowboys have to be in contention with everyone returning. But now it's like, are you running Tony Romo back, where you're giving up 25 or 45, 50 points a game and hoping that Dak and Zeke can, really shoulder all of this? But I do have faith in the young cornerbacks that are there. But at the same time, I don't think that's the game plan. I think in the draft this year, it's a serious plug and play for Byron Jones. Obviously, the production is not going to be completely matched, but guys like Chidobe, guys like Jordan Lewis, were taking that next step in their evolution as football players on their rookie contracts. You can go and get a guy like, any of the cornerbacks in this draft right now are very talented, but CJ Henderson is just my go-to guy at the pick that we have. And if not, you can move back, you can go get Diggs, you can go get a ton of different cornerbacks, even in the second round. So I think right now, for me, I'm looking for Byron Jones's replacement in the draft because, yes, there's other holes that we can fill throughout the draft. But if there's one glaring, like, wow, this is really going to hurt us, the linebacker is not bad. D-line, a lot of potential with the signings and the attention that it's gotten. The entire offense, don't even give me any debate. Like, they're fine. Jarwin's going to have a big year. But at the end of the day, that secondary without Byron Jones, how does it improve? HaHa Clinton-Dix, having him coming in at safety, like, it's definitely going to add that good veteran presence in the locker room and good signings this season. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't go out there and go get a guy that can, if not right away, at some point very soon, step into Byron Jones's foot or into his shoes, or at least bring enough to, with this 3 or 4 that you got going on in the secondary, they can just hold it down. But I definitely think just finding Byron Jones's replacement is going to be number one. But if you put a gun to my head and said, sign Amari or Byron Jones, I'm signing Amari. If you ask me, I want to win a championship this year. And I don't think bringing back Byron Jones and letting Amari go and having a receiving core of Gallup and who is a championship caliber offense. I don't think so at all.
I think this one's also weird for me too, because Kevin brought up something that I didn't even think about. Signing Cooper over Byron Jones is basically also saying, hey, Gallup, like, you're not gonna stay around. Like,
I didn't think that either.
You don't usually keep two receivers signed. You think about the last year the Bengals had where they won their division. There was AJ Green, Sanu, and Marvin Jones. Next thing you know, Sanu's gone and Marvin Jones are going. They can't pay everybody. Then their offensive linemen are gone. Now they're back to trash in literally just 1 year. And so it's
sorry guys.
No stress. My thing with Byron Jones is, to me, when he has the opportunity, he doesn't make enough plays. Like, it's one thing to be there in basketball. It's one thing to be their defense. I'm always there. It's another thing to block the shot. And Byron Jones in his career had 2 picks? I was at one of the games. He had a pick 6 against the Redskins. It was picked because it was tipped by somebody else, and he ran under it and took it to the house. Like, that's not enough plays. He's got, like you said, an Olympian. The athleticism is unreal. But 2, maybe 3 years ago, the year before we got Zeke, the 4th pick, we were running with Matt Castle and Kellen Moore as the quarterbacks. Yeah. But the bright spot was Jordan Lewis and Awuzie as rookies coming in there and taking those number 1 and 2 cornerback roles. And the defense was never the problem. It was always like, we were up like 13-9, but couldn't get 1 stop. So we lose 16-13. Like, that was how the whole season went. I think that Jordan Lewis, Awuzie, and Brown, this trio, they remind me a lot of the Boston Celtics. When they went to the playoffs and went to the conference finals without Isaiah Thomas, you could see what they could do. But then they brought in Kyrie. It just kind of stunted the growth. So now Rozier all of a sudden isn't doing what he's supposed to do. Jaylen Brown's not doing what he was supposed to do at this point. Jason Tatum is not doing where he's supposed to be at this point. Now Kyrie's gone. Here they come again. Like, this is what they do. And I think that I don't want to compare Byron Jones to Kyrie Irving, but I think that this is that we saw 3 years ago what these 3 could do together. But because we had Byron Jones playing safety at that time.
Right, exactly.
Once he was playing corner, that lowered Lewis's snaps a ton. Every time Jordan Lewis is on the field, he makes a play. No one can deny that. Every time. So it's like, these guys are going to get a chance. It's them. It's their show. You got HaHa Clinton-Dix on the backside. I think that's a nice signing, at least for a while. And may as well go ahead and balloon up a nice little Jadeveon Clowney deal for a year and just really solidify that D-line. But that's another story for another time. But I think that the Cowboys have already done it where they said, all right, let's just go with a bunch of just receivers and let's see what we can do. And they traded a first-round pick for Amari Cooper. I don't think they want to trade another first-round pick to get another receiver this year.
And you can see the difference that it made the second Amari Cooper landed in Dallas. It was a completely different Dak Prescott, a completely different team. And you ask, what do I look for in a first-round pick? Amari Cooper, someone of that caliber. So,
and that brings me to my next point. I think that signing Cooper over Jones not only says Gallup, this is going to be iffy if you're going to stay, but it also kind of shows you the lack of trust there is in Dak that they've shown with the contract. I think that I don't know if they believe that Dak Prescott can do it without that quote unquote bailout receiver, like you just mentioned it, the numbers don't lie. It's a completely different quarterback with Amari Cooper and without him. And I think the Cowboys see that. And it's like, okay, well, we can't trust that our quarterback is going to play at that Pro Bowl, for the first 5 weeks anyways, MVP level without this. We've tried to not have a number one receiver before. Maybe they don't, we don't see what we see in practice. We don't know what they see in practice with Gallup. Maybe they don't necessarily think he's ready yet. But Byron Jones is going to need a big payday. We can probably roll with the 3 guys who have shown the potential, and we can try to work on making sure we keep our offense, where it needs to be.
Yeah, dude, crap. Go draft 3 corners in the draft this year. Who cares? Just go put as many of them on the rosters as physically possible and just see what happens. Like, at the end of the day, drafting other positions is nice, but like, we're pretty stacked like everywhere right now. So at the end of the day, like, the signings were great. The team that is currently there was great. So go out and just fill the secondary and see if you can really find, lockdown secondary along with one of the most high-powered offenses in the league. That's a championship.
Or that offensive line. And the only reason I say that,
Frederick.
Connor Williams is solid. Lyle Collins, love him. Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. But that center, like Looney, is okay. He's solid. But
I'm trying to tell you, Connor McGovern is going to be the guy. I'm trying to tell you. I already know.
I'm all for it, And then this year, guys like Tyler Biadasz from Wisconsin, you can get in the 2nd or the 3rd round. I'm really big fan of him. Stuff like that. Lloyd Cushenberry from LSU. So there's definitely some guys that you can bring in here too, and see, maybe take a shot at center, take a shot at secondary, and call it a day.
Yeah. Offensive line. I don't see a lot of places where they can really we got to get this. It's just going to up, corners, offensive line, no depth positions, just stuff like that.
Now, I'll tell you what I think the Cowboys should have done. Because, one, I do believe that Byron Jones for the Dallas Cowboys isn't the right guy. Because, to me, playing in that Seattle scheme, that's not Byron Jones. Byron Jones is the Patriots, is the guys of a Stephon Gilmore, the McCourties, where you playing man on man, it's me and you, and let's go. With that athleticism that he has, he's playing in the wrong spot. Seattle, they stay on one side the whole time, and I'm not saying the Seattle scheme is bad, but when you think about all the teams who lost in the Super Bowl recently, it has been the Seattle scheme. Yeah. Whether they blew a lead, Atlanta Falcons, 28-3. Whether it was against the Broncos that were paying Manning, or it was who's the other team that played Seattle scheme? The Seattle when they lost to the Patriots. I mean, granted, Seattle blew that one themselves, but still. Either way, I think Byron Jones letting him go was the right decision. Now, what I also think the Cowboys should have done was, you're not in the situation like Minnesota was when you had 2 guys, 1A, 1B yet, but sometimes you have to take that risk. And I know that Cooper was traded for a 1st-round pick, and I know that he can be at any given day a top 5, but I also think he is a guy that has a low floor, high ceiling. And with the Raiders, you saw how bad that really was. Like, when he was on the Raiders, they was 100% dependent on Amari Cooper. Now, they had Michael Crabtree, who, according to Richard Sherman, is mediocre. But it's like, if Cooper didn't show up, the Raiders' offense was nothing. Coming to a team like Dallas, we say this all the time, like with the Warriors, like Kevin Durant, Curry, Klay Thompson, that's amazing. But if you took Curry and Durant away and just left Klay by himself, it's not going to be the same impact. It's not going to be felt the same way. Right. And I think if you rely on Klay the whole time, I don't think he can get the job done. That's how I feel like with Amari Cooper by himself, he's not. When you want to rely on him the whole time, like he's the number one guy, he's our focal point, it can get a little skewy. But when you bring him to the Cowboys, where we have this offensive line, we don't really need you to be A+. Now we need you when it's 4th and 9 against the Eagles. We need you right there. But I can use Gallup. I can use Jarwin.
Yep.
I got 21 behind my quarterback. We are fine. If you don't want to come and be 5 catches, 180 yards, you don't have to do that. Now, when it happens, thank you God, thank you Jesus. But it's like, if you have that 5 catches, 44 yards, okay, because I know Gallup might get me 5 for 70, or Zeke might give me 150. And I think that to that point was like, you might have been okay without Cooper, because I just don't like the 5 years, $100 million. I think that's a lot for him. And because his like being on the Raiders, the floor ceiling is way high, but we being the Cowboys, you shrink the floor a little bit, right? But I think when you have these receivers, like you could have got you a Robbie Anderson for, I think he went for like $10 million for 2 years, well, $10 million per year for 2 years. And then you could have used one of your draft picks in the deepest draft. Everybody's talking about how great this receiver draft is. I think a Robbie Anderson and let's just say a Denzel Mims from Baylor in the second round could have been good enough with Gallup. And if Gallup ascension is on the rise with a run first team anyway, you probably could have been okay if you had let Cooper walk away.
You probably could have been, that's the thing. I think that's been the last 10 years. Like, okay, well, it's the Cowboys. They have so much talent around them. Like, well, I'm sure they'll be okay even when they go with this route. But at the end of the day, like I'm going to keep going back to, I really think it's just, what does McCarthy and this new coaching staff need to win a championship in the next few years? But not just say, here's the 3-year window. What do you need to win right now, right this second? And then if it's not good enough, we'll ask this question again next year. And I think that was the honest answer coming in. Like, without Amari, we saw this offense and it wasn't that great. And with Amari, it is the world of difference. And yes, the money was a lot, but inflation, next man up, it's just how this all works. I don't want to hear a debate from anyone about someone that signed 4 years ago and why that person who may be more talented than Amari Cooper is making less money. It's because he signed 4 years ago. Dollar changed, inflation changes, time changes. So at the end of the day, I agree with you, Kev. I don't think he's worth that dollar amount. Was Kirk Cousins worth that dollar amount? No, he was not. Not saying that he's not a talented quarterback that can lead you guys to a championship. I loved the signing, but people didn't love the dollar amount. I said, what do you want to do? I mean, that's the next guy up. Right. Like, what do you expect? Like, you can't compare a contract from 4 years ago and say, is Kirk Cousins better than this guy? No. But if that guy was in the exact same free agency class right now and they both signed contracts on the same day, homeboy signs for 100, the other one signs for 120, you're saying that's where you could compare, apples to oranges. Who's more talented? Who got this? It's the same time, same amount of pressure on both these franchises, same CBA, same everything. So at the end of the day, I think, like Lawrence just commented on my Sportscaster stream, Colts Law, he said, got to pay your difference makers or the locker room has nothing to fight for on the field. And I think that's been the thing. It's not like the Cowboys haven't had the talent. It's just they haven't had a guy that's made them want to fight for it on the field more than every other team in the league, because we're more talented than almost every other team in the league. So having Amari there, it's the leadership, I think he is why Gallup was successful. He is why Dak is more confident. He is why there's pressure off Zeke and he can go off anytime. So I agree with Colts Law here, who commented on, I think you got to pay him. But at the end of the day, if you're thinking Gallup might be on his way out at the end of his rookie contract because of this move, are the Cowboys not thinking that too? I think maybe they do go for a Denzel Mims in the second, or maybe they do go for someone else like a Brandon Ayuk at the end of the second or the beginning of the third, or a Homer from Penn State. Like, there's, like you said, a huge class of very talented wide receivers coming out of this draft, one of the best that we've ever seen. So I agree, maybe even a Michael Pittman in like the third or the fourth and take that shot. That's the same kind of upside as Michael Gallup was, and that worked out. So I think maybe now another fun thing is let's look for Gallup's replacement. Let's enjoy the time that we have with him, because it's still a few more years or a couple more years. And at the end of that, we got our next guy. And I think that that will be exciting to watch, I think. But if that's going through your mind, Kev, which wasn't even going through mine or Kevo's, I think that's probably going through the Cowboys front office, and they're probably going to look for a replacement, if not in the early rounds, and maybe the fourth or the fifth, and get a really good value pick. Because this receiving class is insane. So,
right, and like I say, it all depends on how do the scouts, how do the coaches see Gallup versus how they see Amari Cooper. Now, you trade their first round pick away, so I understand the okay, well, we can't just lose it. I get that. I get why you decide to pay, but we've seen examples like this where you got this guy here. I'm gonna go right back to what Kevin said about the Celtics. We got this guy here. We're gonna pay Gordon Hayward all this money, but yet here comes Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and all three can play together. That's fine, because obviously it's gonna make Dak better, it's gonna make Zeke better, it's gonna make everybody better. But it's like, okay, how are we spending our money if the Celtics is weakness is rebounding well, we still didn't get the big man that we need, but we got these 3 young wings that can do it. So we got to do 3 good receivers, but we have to go spend money, not a lot of money, but on Gerald McCoy, who's 32 and past his prime. You know what I'm saying? Like to fix the D-line, where you could have ballooned, like Kevin mentioned earlier, you could have ballooned this go get Robbie Anderson and draft a receiver and balloon this Clowney deal. I mean, like I said, it's all about, where you put it at and how you look at it, but it's how they feel about Gallup and how they feel about Cooper. And I know Jerry Jones wants to play his guys because he has the track record that he does do that. So it's a lot of different directions that you could have gone. I'm not sold on Amari Cooper because of the reason I said about, like, I feel like the Cowboys are hiding his flaws as far as, he has those games where he duds and those games where he balloons up. He's still that same receiver. He's still that same guy, but it's not going to look as bad with the Oakland Raiders versus it does with the Cowboys. And that's just kudos to the coaching staff about, okay, well, if Cooper can't get off or Cooper can't do this, don't worry about it. We can give Zeke 25 carries. Gallup can get 10 targets, and we're still gonna score the same amount of points if Cooper went off. So it just depends on all that. And that's the idea I thought of was like, okay, well, it probably didn't have to come to a Byron versus Cooper. It could have been to what if we got rid of both if we had the resources to do other things with it.
Right. I hear you.
Before we get out of here, so what's next for the Cowboys? I know we have this, they have this virus going around, and we don't even know if football is going to come back. But with the draft coming up this year, just tell me who y'all think y'all should get with the 17th pick, at least, if not a player, the position that as far as your top 3 needs you think. And then what do y'all expect with Mike McCarthy? And where do y'all see yourselves just next year? You ain't got to be too long, but, we are an hour.
CJ Henderson's my pick at 17. If I have the choice right there, I think trading back is a really, really fun scenario for the Cowboys this year, acquiring some more picks, more talent in such a deep class, and still going and getting your guy. You can still get a really great guy in the end of the first or even in the early 20s, just trade back 3 or 4 picks. You'll easily pick up a 3rd or a 4th or something that can bring in another guy in here. So I would love to see him trade back, but if it's at 17, CJ Henderson, some people call it a reach. Some people say he's even potential to be a top, 12, 13 pick. But at the end of the day, Olympic athleticism, it's just so similar to Byron Jones. It's really insane. And I haven't seen his IQ tests or anything like that. It really isn't the biggest tell to me. But to see the leader of your secondary who's smarter than everybody else, more athletic than everybody else, has a proven track record in college, it's just, I don't understand how you can pass that up. But get strategic, move back. I think if he's picked right before, K'Lavon Chasen, if he's there, from LSU, if you really want to make an identity and you're talking about a Kevo, this D-line just can't figure it out. You bring in McCoy, you bring in Poe, you got all these guys. You also go and draft a guy like K'Lavon Chasen, who's just an absolute beast. He has more confidence than I've seen from an edge rusher in any of the last 5 years. He's called himself the MVP of this draft. Like, he just won a national championship. Like, he was the leader of that defense. So besides Grant Delpit. So but at the end of the day, that would be really interesting too, create an identity. That's right there, one of the better defensive lines on paper in the league. But like we keep mentioning, that secondary is a big question mark, and I'd love to see them bring in 2 or 3 different corners and use their first round pick on 1 too. For the second part of the question, I don't think a Super Bowl is necessarily in the cards this year. I'm not willing to rule it out yet. A brand new coaching staff from top to bottom, it could just click and be perfect. Could take some time. We'll see what happens with this draft, but I think right now it's a guaranteed 11 wins. I think that's a really realistic number. I think an 11-win season is where we're heading. If it's 10, I'm still really excited about that. If it's 12, I think that's even better, and that's really impressive. We have the potential to do it. They've done it with Dak. But at the end of the day, right now, it's going to depend on how the coaching staff from top to bottom clicks right away. If it takes a few games, if they come out firing right at the beginning, and I think with this whole quarantine, it's just going to give teams more and more time to gel, game plan, get their shit straight. So I think it's only going to help the coaching staffs that are, newly put together, get them more chemistry. But at the same time, you can't really duplicate the game, and how that all unfolds. So at the same time, you just got to wait and see. I'm excited the draft is still staying. It's going to be weird, the fact that it's remote. But yeah, I really want to shout out everyone for staying busy during this weird time. And, talking sports is the only thing that's going to get us through it for all of us kind of guys. So definitely really excited to at least have the draft, have that content to still cover, see how these teams are really starting to unfold after such a crazy free agency this year. Thank God the CBA passed when it did with all this stuff going down. If we didn't get that week long, of signings plus still kind of going, in smaller signings right now. But if we didn't get that, we'd all be going absolutely nuts right now. So I'm pumped for that. I'm blessed for that. I'm blessed that we're all still here. Thank you guys for bringing me on to chat and talk about it, because this is the kind of stuff that keeps us all going right now. Obviously, it's tough to get discouraged. And when sports is such a big part of your life and it's removed suddenly, it's shell shocking. None of us have ever experienced it. So definitely weird, but yeah, really excited that the NFL is still putting out a lot of exciting news, and we're able to at least, mess around with theoreticals and stuff, and really, put a lot of different ideas into works and see if maybe throughout this time we can, get creative and have more and more fun kind of segments like this together. I'm super excited you brought me on, my man.
Okay, no doubt.
Draft. One, that Chasen pick, if he's there at 17, I feel like you have to go get him, period. If not, I really like McKinney from Alabama, the safety. I've wanted a safety for nothing against Sheffield, but I've been wanting a safety for 4 years, man.
Yeah.
4 years. And I love McKinney from Alabama. I love Grant Delpit from LSU. Something about that number 7, just
special.
But me and Kev were talking about this before. Delpit, a lot of his mistakes this past season were overshadowed by how great of a season the team had. He did kind of regress.
Fell off a little bit. Yeah, he fell off a little bit. Yeah,
from 2 years ago as opposed to last year. But that trade him back, if they're both on the board and you're at 17, you're like, okay, well, I don't think at 17, I don't think there's going to be any offensive linemen that are going to be worth drafting at 17. You can go the CJ Henderson route, but what if you trade back to 24 and you pick up a second, and then you're able to get one of these safeties and then go get Diggs right in the second round. And now you've got 2. So honestly, that secondary as well. I want more so safety, because Clinton Dix doesn't seem like a defense changing kind of safety. Yeah. Not a Tyrann Mathieu or a Eric Berry in his prime or Ed Reed. Right. He's gonna play in the box. And help us stop the run. I think that stopping the run is a big issue we had for 2 years, really, and we just went and got D tackles. Now Terry Poe is going to just clog up the paint.
Poe gonna stop the run. He gonna stop the
run. And then offensively, like I said, I don't think any offensive linemen are really going to be there at 17. There's some good ones, but at 17, I don't think there will be any that'll be worth the 17th pick. So I like that trading back a lot if Chasen's not there, and if McKinney and Delpit are both not there. Or if they're both there, trading back. And next year, I could see us win anywhere from 9 to 11. I could see us at 9 and 7, just as easy as I could see us 11 and 5. I don't see McCarthy as that big of an upgrade from Jason Garrett. And what I mean by that is, there are things that Garrett does well, and there are things that hold him down. McCarthy, it's the same thing. It's just different things. But
I think at the end of the day, though, you leave Kellen Moore right there, every single other person is different. Every person in the building. When you bring in a new head coach, it's like, oh, how are all the other managers that have been at this restaurant for all these years going to react to the new GM? Like, fuck no. It's like Kellen Moore, you're 18 years old. You sit right there with your clipboard, and the rest of us coming in here, we're changing everything. So I think that's where it could be a negative thing. I've never actually seen that get flipped really, but I don't think McCarthy's the savior. He's not. I wanted a guy like Urban Meyer or some crazy, big person. I wanted Parcells again. I wanted Jimmy Johnson again. So that's why I wanted that kind of prestigiousness. But at the end of the day, I'm excited to see how this works. McCarthy, bringing in everyone.
Just the change is just exciting. I honestly, it could have been Jeff Fisher. Anyway. It's a difference. I'm just happy to see what it is. I wanted Urban Meyer as well. I've been wanting Herm Edwards for God knows how long. I wanted John Gruden 4 years ago. But anyways, I can see 9 to 11. Definitely, it'll all the scheduling will determine whether we get 11, 12, or whether we get 9, 10. If we get destroyed with 3 road games in a row, and they're at blank, blank, and blank, it just traveling across.
At these Vikings,
Yeah,
My bad.
like that kind of stuff. Division definitely up for grabs, but Philly is going to be at full strength too. They can't stay healthy for nothing, anyways. But they're always, their D line is the one D line that them and the Vikings D line is the one D line where I was like, dang, even with the best offensive line in football, we really sometimes can't do nothing with these guys. Fletcher Cox is a manimal, like Jesus. So I'm just really excited. I'm glad to be talking sports with you guys too, man. Like, I don't know. If I wasn't working, I don't know what I would do in my life, like not having anything to watch. Like, it's supposed to be March Madness supposed to be going on, the NBA playoffs, like it's supposed to be able to get ready to ramp up. Like,
baseball season just started, NHL playoffs, like we got the draft.
So I'm glad the draft is still happening. It'll be some great content to talk about as well, just like you said. I wish we would have got to talk about the Dak contract. If we should get him a contract or whatever, but I guess that'll be another conversation for another time. It has been an hour. But
they better pay the man. All I'm gonna say.
They probably should, but I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't give him more than $28 million. I'd check his oil and see if he wants to go gamble, because I'm not paying more than 28 straight up. I don't care that Goff got blank and Wentz got blank. You're not going to force my hand because they made a mistake. That's not. You're not going to make me pay you a bunch because they messed up. That's not how it's going.
But that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. So I appreciate y'all guys for joining me, and we're just gonna let the music take us out. If I turn it up anyway. Hey, appreciate y'all, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.